Greetings, sunshines and sunnies. It is I, Queen J Lotus Pimp Sunkiss, coming at y'all right quick, right fast, maybe, for a reality reads. And for this one, this is part 2 of the Real Housewives of Atlanta reality reads about this whole Kenya Moore and Brittany Edie situation, child. So on this part, I'm focusing on their initial introduction that happened on episode 1 at the very end of the episode at Shamia's party. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the specificities of these cards and questions. So in the previous part, and might I add, I will have a playlist created for this saga by the time this video is up. So if you have not caught up, make sure you get yourself caught up. Go on over to the playlist and tap in. But also, child, you know, if you don't care about all that, you can just stay right here. But I ain't gonna waste no more time. I'm gonna go ahead and get right into the specificities of the first question that I asked, which was about the ring, okay? The comments about the ring. So in that scene, after the introductions of it all, we're gonna go back to the specific introduction. But right now I wanna talk about this here ring comments, okay? So right after the introductions, at least how it's shown on the episode, right after the introductions and everything, I believe it is Cynthia that says, so are y'all divorced now or not? She's talking to Kenya when she says that. And Kenya gives her response. And then Britt says, oh gosh, everybody's going through divorces. You're going through a divorce. You're going through a divorce. You're going through a divorce. And then Kenya, and mind you, the camera zooms all the way in on Kenya's face, okay? It zooms in, you know, to where you can see, get a good look at Britt's ring as she's talking, and then it zooms in on Kenya's face. At that moment, Kenya then says, oh, so you're married or engaged? That's your wedding ring? And they have the whole exchange, and there's this quote-unquote confusion about, you know, why Britt doesn't have the wedding bands on. Is it her first marriage or her second marriage? Or it's just the anniversary ring and all of that. So it's this whole debate amongst the audience and also somewhat, you could say somewhat amongst the cast in a way about whether or not Kenya was actually being shady, okay? So I wanted to ask Spirit. Specifically, I want to see what the divine realm has to say, honey. And so I asked, was Kenya genuinely being shady? Was she being picky-eyed? Was she being malicious and insulting when she was making comments and asking questions about Brittany Edie's wedding ring? And the card in answer that we got for that is the Temperance card. Straight up, straight out the gate. It wasn't no whole lot of flipping and shaking and moving and caking around about it. That card flipped straight out real smooth about it. So I ain't gonna lie, I'm very bucked up off of that because I told y'all. Because as much as I love Kenya, she has a pattern. And I am not desensitized to bullshit. I am not the type of person that gets used to, complacent with, desensitized to bullshit. I don't care how far you can go. I don't care how ugly your shade can get. Light shade, fun shade, shade is shade. It's shade. And I see you. I see you for your works, okay? And so a lot of people have this thing, because I would see this with Jocelyn Hernandez at certain points. I've seen this with Nene in certain points, you know, how people respond to them. I've seen this with Gizzard Bryant over there on Potomac as well, how people respond to her in certain points, okay? Even in, if we take it on back, we can also say how people would respond to New York, Tiffany Pollard in certain points, such as where people get so used to them being over the top that when they do seemingly small things, they dismiss it. Because it's like, oh, well, they can be worse, so we just should be glad that it ain't all of that. Well, they can be worse, so that ain't nothing compared to what they can. Like, no. Because that's also how people end up in fucked up relationships. You settling for something now just because it ain't as bad as what you had. How about it just be great? How about you just not do that? Why are you doing that? Why are you shading? Let's focus, class, right? Okay, so to further evaluate on the messages from this card, that's low-key, high-key also what Spirit is communicating by giving us the Temperance card as the yes card. Because it's giving that Kenya, and this is like a follow-up message from the last reading. Regardless of how you feel about Britt, how you perceive her, from Kenya's vantage point, Britt gives balance. Britt gives the essence, the energy of balance. Not to mention, Britt is also a Libra. So from Kenya's vantage point, it's giving. She's seeing Britt there all, in her grounded, evolved energy. At least, in that moment, at least, this is how Kenya is seeing her. And she wants to disturb it. She wants to disturb it. And we all know, those of us that know, that Kenya is very sensitive about having a man or not. And she's also quite sensitive about her situation with Mark and the divorce of it all and all of that. And that is also totally understandable because that man has been putting her through the fucking ringer, honey. But we're saying that to say that when Britt started saying, oh, everybody's going through a divorce, da 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 da, it's like it was fine for Cynthia to ask her that, but Britt started talking, and Kenya already has this mindset of, why is this bitch here? Why are you talking? You need to speak when you're spoken to. And then, not to mention, follow-up messages and reaffirm and confirm messages from the last part. Kenya is jealous of Britt's marriage. She is jealous and envious and disdained by the fact that Britt is a wife at all. She feels like the type of woman Britt is, or the type of woman Britt has been, that should not be her position. That should not be her spot. She shouldn't have everything that she has. So that's what that's given, and that's what that card is giving. And like I said, I have been a fan of Kenya. I have liked Kenya. But child, her presentation, honey, made some things very clear to me. And this reading here is just confirming what I feel like I saw. But we're going to get to the presentation in the next part. Let's keep focusing on this part right here, right? So, yeah, we covered that part. We're going to go ahead and move to these next cards, which gets into what I had brought up in the last part, in the first part of this saga, which is when Kenya walks up and she's greeting everybody. She ignores Britt speak to her at least like 2 or 3 times, right? So I wanted to ask Spirit for confirmation as to whether or not she was intentionally ignoring Britt. So I asked. And what we have is the 6 of Swords, and it came out sideways. So that gives both a yes and a no. So I had to ask for clarity. Had to. And what we got is the number 64 times relentless advance. It came out sideways as well. And the Emperor in reverse. So what this gets into is letting us know what Kenya was thinking and perceiving in that moment. Okay. Now, I'm going to start off with the Love and Money card, which is the number 64 times relentless advance. And because it came out sideways, we're dealing with both sides of the messages. So I'm going to read it out to you now. Grapples with the irreversibility of time and its permanent impact. Understands time's relentless advance and the impossibility of reversal. That's the right side up messages. Now I'm flipping it to the other side and reading off the reverse message. When I am with you, time seems to rewind, and it's like we've always known each other. You feel like a forgotten part of me. We share a bond that transcends lifetimes. All right, now I'm going to explain to y'all what that means in case you didn't grasp it from just the text of it all. What's going on in Kenya's mind in this moment, according to the cards and the channelings of the messages that are coming through here, okay? I hate to say this, I really do. But this is a case where the older woman is coming in hating on the younger version of herself. That's what that card is literally entailing when it comes to this situation. Time's relentless advance. Kenya was hating on this girl. Kenya, in her mind, and this is what Spirit is saying as well with this, and this is also why it is a yes and no. This is the no part that I'm about to explain. Kenya wanted real bad, and I'm picking up that this is coming from like even walking into the scene, going to this event, knowing that it's a group event, everybody's gonna be there, the whole cast is gonna be there, and all that. Okay, and let me bring something back up to y'all because this was also said in the first part of this saga. It was like something that was brought up. I'm gonna reiterate this concept. I know we see this as their first introduction on the show, on the episode, but they had to be introduced prior to this. Okay? So, briefly saying that, keeping that in mind, if you want more, detailing on that according to what the reading brought up, go on over there to that first part and catch up, you know what I'm saying? But that's been brought up here to say that Kenya knew who was casted. They had all had powwows and whatnot before. So there's an understanding about certain things that are supposed to go on, about to go on as they enter this scene. Okay, and I will reiterate what came up in the previous part as it concerns production expected for Kenya. They expected more of like kind of a frenemy type of relationship from them, similar to what Karen and Giselle have and have had on Real Housewives of Potomac, right? Where when they're around each other and when they're on good terms, it's a good funny time and all of that. And then when they at each other's throats, it's cute, fun, funny shade. Sometimes they might go a little low, but it's not anything that gets taken too serious because the shit that they arguing and fighting over, it ain't nothing, no way. And they just saying like, crazy funny shit to each other. That was supposed to be the plan. So when they were introduced to each other in this group setting at this party, that was strategically done because they wanted to get some fun, vibed out, fun girl twerking moments and shit between Brittany and Kenya. But Kenya is coming in resistant to this because, as was said and confirmed, allegedly, according to what the reading brought up in the previous part, Kenya did not want Britt casted. She wanted someone else casted. She feels like what Britt represents, she should not be in the position that she's in as it concerns her status in life, her being a wife and mom, the way that certain people see her and like her, as well as the cherry on top or the peach on top here, Britt now having a peach. Kenya is not with that shit. So as much as she like, yeah, we had some good times in the club and stuff, at these powwows and whatnot, but that was before y'all gave this bitch a peach, and I ain't really trying to do that. So Kenya is entering the situation trying her best to ignore and avoid Britt. So when she walks into the situation, she is intentionally doing her damnedest to not see Britt, because what they are showing me and telling me at this moment, Kenya is walking in intentionally trying to walk over to where she think Britt is not. So initially when she is first walking up and she first hugs Drew, it is, I believe, and it's someone else standing over in that area before she makes it over to Cynthia. Like when she's first walking up over there, before she gets like close into the situation, she doesn't see Britt because she is intentionally trying not to see Britt. She literally walks over there because she thought that wasn't where Britt was. And I'm hearing she's not expecting quote unquote OGs, even though everybody over there wasn't OGs, but like she's not expecting old girls to be mixing and mingling with new girls right at that very moment. She's expecting for there to be more division than what's going on at that moment. So she is caught off guard. This is what they're showing and telling me, spirit that is what they're showing and telling me, that by the time she gets over to Cynthia and Britt speaks that first time, I'm hearing in her mind, it's like, wait, is that bitch? And then when she says, how are you? It's like, oh shit, yeah, that's that bitch. And she like, intentionally trying to, look away and all of that. So the no part is specifically, it's Kenya's delusion that is seeping in there, basically, of her being so committed to not seeing Britt and not acknowledging her that it brings out this no energy, because it's coming from Kenya's perspective of the delusion of her trying to convince herself that Britt is not there. And that that's not Britt speaking to her 2-3 times. And sadly to say, based on these cards, based on the channeling and everything that's coming through, it is rooted in haterism. Specifically, a sad case of the older woman who could be taking this young chap under her wing, choosing to hate on her instead and make her an enemy. So there's that. And then specifically that is further elaborated on when we get to the Emperor card that is in reverse. Is reiterating that the Emperor in reverse is how Kenya feels, or how Kenya felt, feels and felt in the position of the envy that she feels for Britt, and the disdain and the judgment and all of that she feels for Britt. And so projecting that, wanting to make Britt feel about herself the way that Kenya feels about herself. So wanting to like knock Britt off of her pedestal. And this is something that Spirit is bringing up too and really emphasizing. Britt has pretty good posture. There's something about how straight Britt sits up, stands up, how straight her torso posture is. They're bringing up something about like Britt's back is always straight. And I know that seems minuscule, but especially coming from the perspective of someone like Kenya, who comes from a pageant background and modeling background, posture is a big focus. It's a big focus in acting and shit too, because the point of that coming up here and what's being communicated from Spirit is that that straightness of her posture, that straightness of her back sends a message of confidence. You know, again, regardless of how you may feel about Britt, regardless of how solid Britt's confidence is internally, something about her posture helps her work from the outside in a way, if that makes sense. So it may even be a mindful coping mechanism of Britt's to always keep her back straight, because it may help her in like her solar plexus area. It may help her keep her confidence and her anger together. Because I'm gonna like pinpoint something with that. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it straight up right now. It's kind of touched on in the first part, but it's being, more brought to the surface and said straight up in this part, in this message specifically, as what Spirit is communicating to me about this thing with her posture and her back being straight and all of that. Britt has anger issues. Britt has real bad anger issues, and it seems as though she's probably been to some type of therapy and counseling for it. And that's something that may be a mindful coping mechanism and strategy for her to always keep her posture straight, because it's something that helps her keep her cool, keep her mood stable, and keep her sense of confidence stable. Because what a lot of people don't realize too, and this is something that I learned also through my own anger management counseling and things of that nature, that a kryptonite to confidence is anger. Okay, as empowering as anger can be, you have to, one, make the choice to use it and transmute it in that way, but also first you have to acknowledge the slew of things that is contributing to one side or the other type shit. Okay. And so one thing that can really be a damper on people's sense of confidence is their inability to process anger. So a lot of people have a false sense of confidence that ends up being arrogance and a whole lot of egotisticalness and shit, because they've been taught to fuel their sense of confidence and empowerment from the way they perform anger. Yeah, I beat that bitch ass. Yeah, I can beat a bitch up. Da, 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 da. All that hubris. Yeah, when you go low, I go to hell. Da, 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 da. Y'all seeing a pattern here? Y'all seeing some signs and symbols there? All that hubris. That's hubris. That's not actual confidence. And what does hubris often lead to? Tragedy, downfalls, deprecation. Message. So yeah. Spirit is saying that that's something that Britt has been actively and mindfully working on for the past couple of years of her life. And it's been a long journey for her throughout her life, dealing with anger, how to process anger. And so there's been this recognized link between building genuine, authentic confidence in order to stabilize and actually healthily process anger. Now, all of that has been said to say, going back to this thing that Spirit is bringing up about her posture and keeping her back straight and all of that. Kenya don't like that shit. Kenya peep that shit. Not necessarily her whole story of the whole thing of it all, but she peeps how straight Britt keeps her back. And she receives that message of that represents confidence. It represents empowerment, balance, stability, groundedness, which represents a essence of wealth, richness. And Spirit is saying that that's one thing about Britt. No matter what you throw at her, no matter what is going on, no matter, even if she's in a position where she's having to humble herself, she's going to keep that back straight and she's going to keep that chin up. And Spirit is saying this is something that pisses a lot of people off about Britt, because a lot of people are taught to be uncomfortable and threatened by other people being confident, because they have this seesaw mentality that in order for one thing to be up, something else has to be down. So their mind says, if this person is up, then I must be down, because there's no room for multiple things to be true at once. Which essentially is a lack mentality. And so that's something that Spirit is emphasizing here, is this frequency of lack mentality that Britt has been drastically doing what seems to be like real work to pull herself out of. And Kenya has been more so performing the work and has been, in the meantime, in between time, self-projecting her misery onto other people. And it's coming up again. This is a message that's repeating from the first part of this whole thing. Whether Kenya is mindfully or mindlessly doing it, it's like she's been trying to destiny swap with people, but it's been backfiring on her. Because Kenya seems to have a higher calling on her life, and that is also being represented by that Emperor card, despite the fact that it's in reverse. She has a higher calling on her life, and the fact that she has been trying to skip steps and she hasn't been doing the real work. She's just been performing through it and all of that. It's like heavy is the head that wears the crown. What's the other saying? To whom much is given, much is required. And honey, we'll get to that. And now we're gonna go ahead and go on to the next layout. All right, now for this layout, we're gonna zone in straight out the gate onto that 10 of Pentacles right there. Now, what I asked when that card came out was Kenya being intentionally and maliciously and offensively shady when she said that Britt was more than a good neighbor? Yes, when she made that more than a good neighbor comment, honey, was she intentionally, maliciously, and offensively being shady? Okay, was that some nice nastiness? What was going on? So, the card and the answer that we got for that is the 10 of coins, and that is a big old fat ass yes. And once again, y'all, it's coming out that it's rooted in haterism. It's rooted in haterism, and it is coming from this internalized misogynistic mindset that Britt has everything she has because she's a whore. Her pussy in her mouth and her throat and whatever other cricks and crannies she may or may not have used has funded her life. That's the mindset that Kenya has, and she feels like Britt don't deserve shit. So she wants to shame Britt and make Britt feel guilty and make Britt feel ashamed for everything that she has because she feels like she got it by way of sex. And I'm just gonna interject. I'm just gonna interject in here as myself to give my personal opinion on that. And I will always interject on these types of conversations to say, if her pussy paid for it, so the fuck be it, baby. Pussy is power, and it is also currency. It is also a product. It is everything, honey. It is everything. It is fruitful, and therefore it multiplies in a multitude of different multidimensional ways, okay? Okay? Ain't nothing wrong with that. Now, there can be some things, some cons, okay, to the job description and the lifestyle. But every single career and job has its pros and has its cons, has its unsanitary things that may have to go on. So you got to take some precautions, wear your gloves, wash your hands. Okay? Ain't none of that got Nathaniel to do with Nathaniel. All right? That's hers. That's her autonomy. If she want to serve it up on a platter and get tips for it, that's her business. We're not shaming people. Okay? For using what they got to get what they want. Now, if she is selling it for $20, I'm going to shame her for being cheap. All right, that's what we'll shame somebody for, not knowing their worth, okay? But with a purpose to encourage them to want more for themselves, all right? Yesterday's price can't be today's price. Today's price might not can be next year's price, all right? We should be steadily and constantly evolving, which means also Kenya's mindset should be steadily and constantly evolving because you might not have served yours up on a platter, but all that bending it over and all of that other stuff, with bankhead bouncing, spread your legs and stick it out and holding uncomfortable postures for fucking ridiculous periods of time to get a fucking shot and all of that being objectified is a part of the entertainment industry. Okay? Whether you a model, whether you an actor, whether you a passion girl, whatever the fuck, one way or another, you end up being objectified because you have decided to be a doll because God gave you the gift of shape-shifting. It's hard in a swag. Okay? And this is not to say that everybody is getting pimped out and beat on and all that shit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that a part of the job description of being a model, actor, dancer, pageant person, any of that, a part of that job description is to be objectified in one way or another. Because your art is reflecting reality. Therefore, you have to become an object of reality. To see and execute things from an objective point of view. So, Spirit is bringing this up. We're coming back into the channeling now. Because also to, again, give y'all some cricks and crannies of my process and how I do these things. Everything I do is divinely designed. I pray over all these things before I start to make everything divinely designed. So if I wait to the end to give my commentary, that's divinely designed. If I interject in the midst of the messages coming through, that's divinely designed. So like I ain't moving off no bullet points or nothing. I'm going off pure gifts and prayer. And divine design. It was coming up here, okay? So understand that even when I'm interjecting to give my opinion, God is still speaking through me. The divine realm is still speaking through me. So, all of that to say, as I segue my opinion that I just came in to give, is taking us back to messages from the divine and their purpose of bringing all of this up, because all of this also came up in the first half, the nature of the message that's coming out that is. As it got to, ooh, because it's also, Kenya came up in a reading that I did. It was the messages from Aries, I believe. That is on my channel. Be sure to tune in if you haven't. Might leave the link in the comments. But anywho, Kenya came up in that reading as it concerned her being an example of someone who has pissed off the mother goddess realm with this internalized misogyny, internalized self-hate. Okay? So as we get through this layout, and this is what Spirit is saying to me as well, as we get through this layout, it is communicating a lot of the mother goddess realm's upset with Kenya. Okay? Because that is tying into her having that mindset of feeling like Britt don't deserve shit because she's done sex work or, whatever, however she's perceiving it, however it actually happened, whatever. The mother goddess realm is wanting to make it clear that she is dead ass wrong. Now, I know a lot of people come up, well, this person did this person did that, da 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 da. This goes back to that message that just came out about Kenya having a higher calling on her life. And when you have a higher calling on your life, unfortunately, fortunately, you can't do what everybody do and have the same results, okay? Some shit that you do that everybody else is doing, you're going to get a harsher consequence for, because what you over there fucking over is probably a part of your fucking purpose. Which is something that Spirit is trying to communicate here. It's giving that Spirit is saying that Kenya was supposed to be using the accumulation of her experiences to be more so an advocate for women like Britt, to be more so like a big sister for women like Britt. And in the peak of her having everything she needs to be that, she decided to be the exact opposite. And this is not, like I said, we ain't even got to the presentation of it all. We ain't even got there. We ain't even talking about that. We're talking about Kenya having this mindset, period. And the little death of 1,000 cuts happening off of each quote unquote small moment where she is acting out this mindset towards other women and towards herself. And they're bringing up Brooklyn here too, because it's given, this is what's being said, y'all. It's given that you just don't know the journey that Brooklyn has before her. And they're emphasizing that this doesn't mean that Brooklyn is, destined for doom or anything like that. What I'm hearing is Brooklyn is about to be a very unconventional girl. Like, she's destined to be a very unconventional, virtuous woman in a multitude of different ways. And Kenya is creating a circumstance and a future for herself where she ends up being her daughter's biggest hater and her daughter's worst enemy on some shit, because her mindset will be a little fishbowl to all the whale-sized potential and dimensions that Brooklyn ends up displaying. Ooh, child. And that re-emphasizes the messages from Time's relentless advance, okay? It's going back there and it's further saying that Kenya needs to get her fucking shit together. Kenya needs to really unpack those toxic, outdated, self-hating mindsets, because Spirit is really trying to get her to see that if she don't get that shit together and quick, Brooklyn is growing up faster than what she thinks. Time's relentless advance. And she keeps talking about she doing this and that for Brooklyn. She needs to stop hating herself for Brooklyn. Because, honey, I done already said what Spirit said. I ain't got to say it again. I think it's pretty self-explanatory at this point. But I'm wishing the best on this situation. I really hope that Kenya get her shit together, because that there is scary, all right? That there is scary. But we're going to go ahead and tap into these other cards that we have here. Just after I reiterate that all of that was just a 10 of Pentacles, honey. Touching on the fact that Kenya was absolutely being shady and malicious and intentionally offensive when she made the good neighbor comment towards Britt, saying that Britt was more than a good neighbor and all of that. And it is because she feel like Britt is a hoe. Everything she got is because she a hoe, and she don't deserve shit because she a hoe. Unfortunate. So now, when we move on over here to this 10 of Wands in reverse, I asked, why did Kenya zone in on Britt's ring specifically to want to pick at and start, trying to tear at and whatnot? So we got the 10 of Wands in reverse, and reiterating again, she wanted to knock their kingdom down from the bottom up, just slowly tear at it. The type shit where, like, I guess kind of like a Jenga game where just go up to someone's fortress and you pull one brick from the bottom and then you pull another brick from another side and you pull another brick from another side, and slowly but surely it falls apart. So again, whether mindlessly or mindfully, this is spiritual warfare. It's spiritual warfare. It's also psychological warfare. And Spirit is saying that whether she was mindfully or mindlessly doing it or not, she ended up doing some ritualistic shit as it concerns. She was trying to create a tower moment for Britt, because that's essentially what that ends up doing. You slowly picking at something that somebody has built, that somebody has taken out years and years and all of this time and effort and put all of this emotion and investment into, such as a marriage and a family. Y'all like to act like, I ain't saying y'all, not y'all, but y'all love to act like marriage is just a piece of paper, the wedding is just some party that everybody come to and see two people kiss and, you know, run off to go consummate their marriage on a beach or some shit. But no, a marriage is a ritualistic binding. The wedding is a ceremonious ritual, love and legal binding spell. Okay? Think about the detailing of it. You have your petition, which is your vows. You light candles, there are candles lit. You have a spiritual worker there that is qualified and has the competency to solidify, quote unquote, the co-collaboration with God to bind the bond, the union. Okay? Okay? Without taking up too much more time, that should, like, you know, make some shit very clear to you there. It is a ritual. So, whether, like, Kenya don't have to be a witch, and that's one thing I be wanting to make clear, and I'll make it clear here again, too. You don't have to be a witch. You don't have to light as a feather, stiff as a board, light as a feather, stiff as a board. You don't have to do none of that to do a ritual or some ritualistic shit that can get you fucked up on a spiritual level. Because we are spirits. Inevitably, that's what we are. So, Kenya is definitely being used as an example by Spirit as a cautionary tale with this whole situation, because literally the many graves Kenya tried to dig for Britt, she ended up digging for herself. And that should tell y'all something. Those of you that be obsessed with revenge and y'all want to get into spirituality so that you can do hexes and revenge spells on people, that should say something to you. Think it over. And so the rest of these cards are the continuation of answering that question, okay? Why did she zone in on the ring? Why is that something that she wanted to pick at? So we have the flexibility card from the Love and Money deck, and also from the Love and Money deck, small offering and self-discipline. So the flexibility card is right side up. It's the number 5. It's the number of change. It's been a lot of numbers of change throughout this reading. I just haven't, like, specifically pinpointed them. But most of the numbers that we have here are numbers of change. 5 is a number of drastic change. You have 4 and 5 right there. You put that together, you get 9, which is also a number of change. Death before new beginnings. You have 3 and 4 there, which is the milestone number. It's also a number of karma, so it's also a number of cycles, because if you put 3 and 4 together, you get 7. Also, we have the number 10, which is the number of new beginnings. So, again, another number of change. All these 10s that's been here all this time, numbers of change, okay? So, just keep that in mind, because it's thoroughly reaffirming and confirming the same shit that King was really shaking in her boots off the backs of so many different changes, and them making her feel insecure. The changes making her feel insecure in herself and insecure in her position. Which, here we go, flexibility. So, right side up, and it says, adapt and overcome and bend without breaking. Hiding is strategy, not weakness. Strength found in the ability to yield and bounce back, okay? So, again, this is continuing on as to answer the question as to why did Kenya choose to zone in on Britt's ring. So, based on the messages of this card and the text of this card, it gives that, for one, it's another self-projection. Kenya is feeling unflexible, so she's trying to make Britt feel inflexible. I think inflexible is the right word. But anyway, so there's also this thing of, in the midst of that, her trying to see where the cracks are in Britt and in her marriage and her relationship. Where are her soft spots? Where are her insecurities? Where is she inflexible? How much can she take? So this is something that confirms, allegedly, according to the channeling and the cards and the messages from them and all of that, that this is a hazing tactic. It is a form of hazing. So it goes to say that when Britt said that she was being hazed, or that she felt like she was being hazed, that is correct. According to this reading, the channeling, the cards, and all of that, that is correct. She was being hazed. Allegedly, according to this reading and the cards and the channeling, that is correct. It's a hazing tactic. And if you must know, in case you ain't know, hazing is spiritual and psychological warfare. Okay? Now, get into the small offering card, which came out sideways, so we get both sides of the messages. Right side up, we have views you as a temporary pleasantry, not a serious relationship. Can only do small favors, unable to give anything more. Can only offer small gestures and minor tokens of affection. And the other side of that card says, I realize now how foolish I was to treat you as a mere distraction. Our connection deserves more respect, but I let myself and others treat it as insignificant. Now, there are a lot of things about that card and the messages from them that are so understood they do not have to be explained. However, there's a part of this in messages and the channeling that's coming through that Spirit wants me to explain, which is this card is also acting as a confirmation that Kenya is full of shit to sit up and act like she didn't know absolutely nothing about Britt and nothing about her marriage and nothing about nothing before this meeting and before the season started and recording and before she got up there and did their presentation. And Spirit is telling me to tell y'all why as through the messages of this card, because again, this is answering why did Kenya choose to zone in on Britt's ring, therefore her marriage. So she sees Britt as a small offering to her husband. Think of the concept of when a man finds a wife, he findeth a good thing. He findeth a gift from God. Okay? So Kenya's perception is saying, you ain't no gift from God. You just a small offering. You can only act as a temporary pleasantry, not a serious relationship. You can only do small favors. You're unable to give anything more. You can only offer small gestures and minor tokens of affection. And then the other side of that is giving. I realized how foolish I was to treat you as a mere distraction. Our connection deserves more respect. That is Kenya's higher self eating her up inside, saying, you were supposed to be her friend. You were supposed to get cool with her. Even if y'all didn't become best friends or no shit, you were supposed to be her hierophant. You were supposed to take her under your wing. You were supposed to guide her and act more as a mentor, a auntie, a big sis. That's literally what Spirit is saying. Not only did production have that vision for their relationship, you know, amongst the fun frenemy type thing, of course, because it's still a show, but the divine realm actually set up this meeting for Kenya to be more of a hierophant to Britt. But Kenya literally chose to do the exact opposite. And Spirit is saying that's why she's being punished so harshly, because she had a calling. Like that's what this reading is giving. That's what these messages are giving. Kenya literally had a calling as a part of her purpose and on her life to be more of a big sister to this girl. And she decided to be her enemy. She decided to be her bully, to be an Ursula. My gosh, today. Now, this is something else, and I think I'm going to do a video focusing on this particular topic in itself. Okay? Because it's something that is very sensitive, and I don't want to handle this irresponsibly, but it's come up. And you can look at the imagery of your card, of the card yourself, and see that I ain't just making shit up. Okay? So again, this is continuing on to answer the question as to why Kenya decided to zone in on Britt's ring and marriage and all of that. So it's the self-discipline card. It came out sideways, so we get both sides of the message. Right side up, it says, stuck in a bad routine that hampers your productivity. Feeling empowered by choosing sobriety over alcohol. Focus on long-term discipline rather than short-term comfort. Okay, and the reverse side of that says, there are so many temptations to break my discipline, but I'm trying my best to avoid falling into old habits and focus on building a better future. This card is re-emphasizing how spiritual this whole thing is. And a lot of things, honestly, in life that seem so minuscule and petty on the surface, a lot of the time they have real deep spiritual roots. And this particular situation, this whole experience of them two and their relationship and all of that is an example of one of those situations. Because these two have similar wounds, have similar traumas, and they literally see themselves in each other. And Spirit is saying that Britt sees herself in Kenya. That's what made her admire her. It also what made her responses to Kenya so strong. And also, Kenya sees herself in Britt. That was also communicated in the Times Relentless Advance card. Those words and so many words were literally on that card that said Kenya sees herself in Britt. So it's like they have an inevitable trauma bond that could have been, more like some soulmate twin flame type shit. But Kenya chose trauma. Kenya chose to act in her trauma while Britt was trying to choose more of the high road. And again, y'all, don't get stuck and lost in the sauce of only what you're seeing on camera. Okay? So, that being said, this card is also reiterating that both of these ladies have been in a journey of trying to work on their processing and responding and handling of anger and conflict. Not being so quick to fly off the handle when under pressure. Think about this part of the text on the card right here where it says, on the reverse side specifically, there are so many temptations to break my discipline, but I'm try my best to avoid falling into old habits and focus on building a better future. Now, recall when Spirit said, and y'all, I'm gonna be honest about that reoccurring tongue tying. I have been hearing consistently since I started working on this reading. Kenya is clawing desperately on the inside to keep some type of truth from coming out. There's a lot of truths that Kenya is very desperate to keep from coming out. And I don't know, and I ain't saying that your girl is a witch, but one way or another, whether it's mindful or mindless, there is some witchery going on over in her neck of the woods. And it is doing some things, but the rate she's going and the frequency she's on is only doing her a disservice, okay? Allegedly. Shout out to Alexander Rogers. According to my channeling and my spiritual competency and the cards that's coming out and all of that, that's what I got, okay? Now, okay, back to what I was saying here. Britt and Kenya have both been on a long journey of trying to edify themselves. However, Britt is more willing to face her own demons. Britt is more willing to actually do the work because she is more willing to face truth. Kenya has been performing. So, what this has caused is that them coming together, it's caused this thing, and it's giving me this twin flame analogy again. Because remember, twin flames can show up in different forms. It's not just a romantic thing. So it's giving me this twin flame analogy again, where it's like Britt is literally trying to evolve out of a specific type of functionality, and Kenya is like a crab in a bucket trying to pull her right back down into it. So Kenya is kind of that temptation trying to pull her back into it, and Kenya is projecting on Britt, feeling like Britt is doing something to her when Britt is just being, and Kenya is just triggered. And I know that sounds totally backwards to how it looks on camera, but again, if you haven't caught up on the first part, make sure you get caught up on that first part, because it iterates things that went on before filming and things that went on in the meantime, in between time, outside of cameras being around. And it's certain people involved that are not castmates, therefore cannot be spoken on directly. So the narrative then has to be kind of fragmented and distorted so that other contracts don't have to come into play and extra money and all of that shit. Okay? Okay. And again, I say allegedly. I don't know these people personally. I'm just doing what I do. Okay? So, to wrap up this layout and the messages of this card, I'm just going to say it plainly, because that's what Spirit is directing me to do. Okay? As sensitive as the subject is, they saying rip the Band-Aid off. Both of these women have also, allegedly, according to the channeling and the cards that have come out, okay? Again, I ain't just making shit up. You can see it in the imagery. Both of these women also have some sort of pathology of a generational curse of alcoholism, and they themselves have been struggling with breaking that curse. They themselves have been having a little battle with some alcoholism. I use the term little loosely. I'm not saying they are alcoholics. I'm saying that Spirit is communicating that they may have a habit and pattern and cycle of using alcohol to deal with their pain. And that is at play in this interaction that is being read on here. And also in Kenya doing and saying a lot of the things that she did and said, even specifically, because we specifically focused on specifically this first introduction between them that happened on camera on episode 1. So, a part of why Kenya zoned in on her ring and her marriage and said some of the things that she said is because she was under the influence of alcohol. She was drunk. So, as nice as she was trying to come off, as sheepish and all of that as she was trying to come off, every now and again, that alcohol was telling the truth that she really don't see it for Britt and she hate on Britt. So that's why it's this smoke and mirrors thing of 1 minute it's like, oh, smiling in her face, oh, being friendly. Then you shading her ring. Then you shading her saying she more than a good neighbor. Then it's you following it up with laughs and shit, trying to hide the fact that you really don't like this girl and you really are envious of her. And I challenge people to replace Kenya with one of your nice, nasty aunties from the holiday gatherings and the family reunions. Okay? Yeah, it's not so minuscule now, is it? You can see it as shade now, right? You can see it as nice, nasty, you trying to evade being cussed the fuck out and called out on your shit, but you also want to sit up and pick at somebody in peace all at the same time. So it's giving that we giving Portia a lot of heat for all the deflecting and projecting that she doing, but Kenya is doing the same thing. It's just that we know what Portia is deflecting from. It's some most shit that we don't know about with Kenya that she is doing her damnness to trying to keep us from knowing. And real quick, to be fair, I wanted to ask if Britt was being shady, intentionally, maliciously, insulting or whatever, offensively and whatnot, by speaking on the divorces, making the comments and whatnot, calling out the divorces. Was she trying to be offensive? Was she trying to be shady when she started saying all that? And what we got here is the Eight of Pentacles in reverse. And that is no, she was not intending to be shady. She was just trying to talk. Like, it's given that she was trying to be included in on the conversation, make sure that she is, doing her due diligence to get to know everybody and form relationships and do her job, of course, as well. That's what that's given. Now, I was going to also use this part to get into the confrontation from the vault, but because this is already going to the time capacity that I set for myself, I'm just going to let that be its own part, because this definitely gave a lot. It gave more than I expected. More than I expected. This whole thing is giving more than I expected. But go ahead, wrap up here, and give my final thoughts on everything that has come out. As much as I'm being shocked in a nigga named Paul by some of the shit that's coming out, it is also making sense. It is also making sense to me. And I do think it's unfortunate that there, it's been channeled that there was this divine design for them to have a mentor-mentee type of bond. Kenya was supposed to be more of a hierophant to her, but it ended up turning out so nasty because of choosing insecurity over just absolutely anything else. But that's also why I am appreciative of the fact of Spirit communicating that this is also a cautionary tale, particularly on Kenya's end, because in this society that we live in, especially in this climate that we've been in for a good while, of when you go low, I go to hell, and all of this glamorization and rewarding of bad behavior and finding any justification to be evil, it's really out of hand and it really don't service nobody. And so people really need to grasp that when you do certain shit, listen, I ain't even got to be all elaborate about it. It's been said. The grave you dig for somebody else, you can easily fall your ass in yourself. But not for real. The way that, like I said, Spirit has communicated that this is divinely designed for Kenya to be more of a hierophant in the situation, and she chose her shadow over that because she's unwilling to face certain parts of herself and deal with it and shed from it and evolve. A large part of that comes from enablers. It takes a village to build up and destroy. Death of 1,000 cuts, and sometimes those 1,000 cuts are an accumulation of people going up for your bad behavior that is doing you a disservice. Even if it is not showing the disservice in the moment, in the long term, it shows. Hence the phrase, death of 1,000 cuts. It don't seem like nothing at first, but eventually becomes very clear that it is something. So when you call yourself being a fan or being a friend or being somebody's bestie, or you riding and dying for somebody and you up there encouraging them to do self-deprecating shit in the quote-unquote justification of they did this to me, so I'm doing that to them, you are setting them up for failure. And you are contributing you are contributing to their deprecation, their downfall, and their dishonoring of themselves and everything great that they could have the potential to be. So if you call yourself loving somebody and you're rewarding and enabling their bad behavior, I behoove you to actually learn what the fuck love actually means. Because if you're enabling and rewarding bad behavior, I behoove you to face and realize that you actually fucking hate them, and you might need to make sure that you don't hate yourself as well. Test. Now, with all that being said, child, if I do say so myself, honey, I have milked this cow dry. And I'm thoroughly appreciative for the exchange of vibes. And if you're feeling synchronized, please do me a divine design and like, share, and subscribe so that you can be one of the first to be back with these queenless qualities for the next time. And be sure to bless that comment section with your questions and conversations. And as always, I bid you in all ways like love, healing, and liberation. Emphasis on liberation. Mwah.
Smile. Yeah. We're gonna do this one the very right way. Trav.
Oh, really?
Woke up in the morning with the sunshine.
Nice.
Animated birds on my power line.
There they go.
Mapping out my life, cause it's by design.
By design.
Checking on my friends, hope they doing fine.
Nice.
And all my fake friends put me on the shelf. I worry way less when I'm by myself, though. But you can always call me if you need my help. I got the type of love that you never felt. Okay, all day, let me demonstrate. Throw bad vibes at my feet, I'ma levitate. My trajectory, yeah, that would never change. I'ma be me, even if I look strange. I be focused on life with no pain. Make a day from the night, cause I brought paint. I've been through hell, but for heaven's sake, I'm in my lemon car.